Recording. All right, welcome everyone at the next multi-networking community sync. Today we have Mate 8, and I think I have one topic, the DRA progress. I think I didn't attend yesterday's meeting, so Doug, I would like to hear from you on what's happened, what was discussed there. But so maybe I will go first. This week, what I learned is that there is this, I think, a repository, and I'm gonna link it in the meeting here, that basically holds the, I think the proposals of the changes for the
It's a set of work that Valermic's been doing, working with the group to put
yeah,
together
exactly. So this
API
is
prototype. It's an API prototype.
exactly, and
It's
basically
not the
what.
same as the original DRA, so they're figuring out how they can best
Yes.
bring
So I think this is the
classification.
place where we need to start reading everyone. And let me share this tab. So I think this is where I want to. I didn't have time beginning of this week to look at this, but I think one interesting piece of this is the first thing is it's now called device claim, not a claim. That's one thing that I learned. Device claim has devices, and I think there is some magic that they added, or did not. Did it make the cut? Let me see. It didn't. So I think the version I looked at yesterday did have a device type. I think that got cut. What I'm looking at. So we have device class. I think the class will be it. Request matching attributes configs. I think maybe class holds that. No, so maybe going through class. There was a device type explicitly. This was like a wink towards what we were initially requesting, because yeah, so that's what we were talking about, I think 2 weeks ago, about having the type. There is a class. Let me check that, Doug. This is where in test data, let me show that. And this is in test data classes, 46
Yeah,
line.
I found this interesting because it's kind of like a
46, this guy,
in
right?
use example. Yeah. So yeah, the gist here that he's trying to
Oh,
say is
here it is, yeah.
okay, yeah,
Device
we're
device.
yeah. So it's like you're saying, okay, I've got these classes of devices. They're this kind of SRLV NIC, and they take this kind of driver. And then when you go to allocate, you refer to the class, which I mean seems compelling. It's like here's the thing that I keep getting worried about with these efforts is that we abstract stuff so far that it makes it worse for users. Like it's something
Yeah.
I've been worried about for our entire process here. But it's like conceptually I like it, but I'm getting over that. Yeah, so.
So I think one aspect of this was, what I want to show is, I think we lost params.
Well, one of them
No.
is for the device
Yeah,
classes that you can reference either a config map or a custom resource. So does that
but
satisfy that?
class is, yeah, I think you're referring to, let me see, device class spec, selector definition, and this is this driver constraints and configs. Here, I think this is it, right? The config that you're referring to.
Yeah,
Uh,
because John was mentioning
yeah,
config
this
map
guy here, yeah.
but it also kind of goes into like, yeah, it can, whatever you do on that other side is great. I think it's like, yeah, what's the interface? Because right now there's no like flow back to Kubernetes, like to say, hey, well, if I have this second interface here and I want to know its IP address, there's really no uh, means to do that right now. So you can schedule it, but you can't say anything more about it. So Kubernetes would not be aware of like its, IP address or anything of that nature, or network as an example.
Right, it would
So-
it would be handled through the instance of the pod down through the container runtime into the device manager that's implemented, right, on NRI or whatnot.
So that's how it's today, but this is where we want to step in and kind of slightly change it. But I think Michael, could you expand? I'm missing what you're saying, that there is no reverse path. I'm
So,
confused.
like, all right, multi-network, this
Mm-hmm.
entire cap is about saying, like, all right, you have your ETH0, which is currently by the CNI.
Mm-hmm.
But now you have a second or third or fourth interface, and say, that's on network A, the other one's on network B and network C.
Mm-hmm.
There's no I don't think there's any means that you can actually return any information back to Kubernetes to make it aware of, like said, the network, aka like it can't create an endpoint because it doesn't exist. There's no means to return that state being the IP address as an example.
So this is where I would imagine something like KNI will step in. Want it, Michael?
I
Could
believe
it?
that's kind of like the high level idea, because that's what's missing.
Right.
Because yeah, we need something to say, like, yeah, or we have a second, yeah, we have this SRIOV device, or we have like an extra VE. Let's just use VE for now. Let's not add in complexity. We have this second VE in here. All right, well, how does Kubernetes know about it? Like,
Right.
other than it has like a device claim, that's great. But now you can't make an endpoint, thus you can't use services for it. So
this is where basically I kept pushing back on the status to make sure we can update that, and then basically okay, I hear you, but I have a short talk with Antonio yesterday as well, and he did say that that will be something like KNI, a possibility. Let's say we will have a device claim. I'm not sure whether a class is a good thing that we would want to use. Maybe it is. I'm not sure how you all feeling about class representing the VET or the standard net device type interface, where I just need another IP inside the pod, multi-home or what's that, or just to represent my multi-tenancy approach, right? Where I want to have network A, B, and I'm connecting my pods to either A or B or C, right? So multi-home or multi-tenancy. And question would be, for those standard cases where we say, okay, now I want to get rid of, I want to kind of go around CNI, I want to use my stuff, is then the class the right way to do it, right? Across the community, stating that, okay, because then everyone can create their own class and that might not be standardized. That's what I'm afraid of. I think what's the definition? Has driver, has constraint, and a reference to whatever you want. And that doesn't work well. Okay, so that part at least doesn't work for us, because each network needs this, right? I want to reference a network attachment definition for each of the networks, not for the whole class. Yes, Pete.
So it's not just that it needs to be visible in the Kubernetes API, it needs to be visible inside the pod. And that's the bit that I'm worried will get lost, because at the moment with Maltus, the way we do that is that the annotations can be seen inside the pod using the downwards API. And we often have pods which are doing roles like being an SBC, and there you've got an access and a core network, and you need to know which is which. And all you know from inside the pod is I've got two devices that I've got to hook up.
I think that was one of our requirements, Pete, where we would use downward API to kind of propagate that. That part we did talked about, and this is one of our requirements to add it, right? So I think that's I'm considering that covered in one of our requirements. So yes, we had that noted to kind of ensure that's there.
Okay, so so if it was in the device claim, it could still be in the downwards API.
I would believe.
I mean, we may have to extend the downward API to do that, obviously, but
sure,
I'm kind of happy with that. Yeah,
exactly, right. So basically, the thing here is we need to have it standardized so that we can use a common downward API. We should not have any common stuff across. today's nothing like that exists, or does it? Like, is there like a download API to list out what interface? I think you have one, so you don't care. So I think there is nothing right today.
There's
Just
Um,
through annotations.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just from the Multus right stuff.
Yeah, there's a few things you can get. You can get labels, you can get annotations, and there's
Mm.
certain fields under pod spec and pod status you can extract. But it
Mm.
seems very much ad hoc. There's only a few things that they've defined as being useful.
That's true. Yeah,
Labels
yeah,
and
yeah.
annotations are usually the standard way of doing it.
Right. So that was at least the kind of the idea in our requirements, that eventually we'll use the download API to kind of expose that as the next phase, by the way, not as the first phase. So device class. So that's my, I think I'm gonna send us some feedback to John, and I think we about this one. But one thing is that the class has the definition. I don't see the type anymore. That's I saw that yesterday. There was a PR I was looking at here yesterday, but I assume that got completely redone, where the claim details, here there's instance and there is details. The claim details had a type, which I think that was a wink to us, and I don't think that made the cut,
It was a
unfortunately.
little repetitive the way they added it.
What do you mean?
The class name itself was also the type. It wasn't clear what the delta was going to be. And
Okay.
Sasha got back from vacation. So
Not sure what does that mean, but okay. Okay. And then I think one thing we got here is device claim. Where did I saw it? I saw the IP somewhere. Allocation device status. Yeah, there you go. That's here. So I think that's in a proposal. So we can we probably can talk about this one, though. I think this is not right, because this is quite specific. You can have multiple other type of devices, and they might have their own stuff, and why we are at least putting emphasis on IP specifically. So that's kind of, I'm not happy about that part. Not to mention this is a list completely. I don't think that's useful unless we just talking about v4 v6, then yes, but otherwise yeah, maybe for v4 v6 that's fair. Where is that? I am complaining, and I'm reading that with you, by the way, because I didn't have yesterday time. I just saw some of PR, so I start reading, but I see they merge stuff. So there is that. I left the link in the chat. Please look through this. And I think we need to give feedback. I think right now is the right time to give feedback on this. I think I'm not sure what is the way. Folks who've been on, I couldn't make the yesterday's meeting, Doug, or I'm not sure, Mike, were you there as well? Is there a way for them to send our feedback against this one, or just create a PR or something?
I would just start interacting with them right there with issues and pull,
Right.
with reviews.
Oh,
It
there
looks
it
like
is.
kind might have replaced type, but I'm not sure.
Yeah.
You can look at
I
his
see there
PRs
is.
and check the diffs.
Yeah, exactly. So basically, oh yeah, there's a, oh, okay, I see. There you go. There you go. I think this is what we want to see. There is explicit multi-networking use cases. There you go. So what does this mean? Pod, resource claim, name net device 0, not used but required, and class net dev 0. Okay, so they want to restrict it by name or something. I'm a bit confused on this. So pod, device claim, name. Considering this whole thing is a list and you can have multiple of them, I'm not sure how to feel about that. This is super confusing for the user if you were to define this, right? If I want to have a representation of a specific network, I want to have one concrete application. I don't want to have multiple lists, and then I think there is, yeah, something like all off, right? So basically Yeah, there are some other mechanisms. This is another list here, which I don't know how I want to feel about that one. I know this gives you a lot of flexibility, but it's a double-edged sword, right? It gives you a lot of ways to mess up, and oh my gosh. So you create your network. Yeah, you have a lot of options of parameterizing. Yeah, match attributes. I think there are some configs as well. Let me get to that. So this is just device claim and template. Oh, this is on a pod level. Oh, I think that's good, right? So basically we get something what's on a pod level, not in the they're all pod level. Okay, there is nothing on container level. Okay, that's at least that's what we wanted initially as well, right? So there is that device claim. Device claim. What does this go? This guy says class name, template. I'm kind of a bit confused. So claim name, okay, because you can have, no, those are all templates. This is a template, okay, here. This is for PF. This is the SROV use case. I think, Doug, this is what you were referring to as well. I assume that's how would we do it, right? Where you would have PF or maybe VF.
Yeah,
Pass and
I hadn't
define
actually
flag.
seen this pull request
Yeah,
yet
this is
either, so I was just
oh,
looking
okay.
after. But so this is good. I added a link to this pull request in our notes because
Yeah.
this is important here.
Yeah. So this is explicitly for us. You can see 8 use cases for this. There are some other one container. What else is here? Can I? No, I cannot. This is, oh, what is this? This is one pod container. So those are GPUs, partial GPUs, and okay, those are the multi-networking ones. Okay, so please read through those and let's leave comments. I think at least that. I see the PRs are treated as basically ways of comment things. So I think this is quite open. Pod spec and more examples, more questions. Yeah. So I think this is what I want to call out here, that this exists. And basically, let's try to contribute. Right now is the time to do this. Give our feedback. Otherwise, probably in a month, the ship will sail, and we're gonna have another battles to do. Yes, Michael.
Yeah, I was just actually talking with John
Mhm.
about this because I guess they did have. I didn't know they actually had a meeting yesterday. So
Yeah, I'm confused as well. I
so
think
they
that
did-
there was some.
it was ad
Yeah.
hoc, but I was just saying.
early, yeah, first meeting, yeah.
But I was just talking to him about, he wants our help on the multi-net side,
Yeah.
which is, obvious. But it was kind of like he has something in device claims that has like device IP addresses. However, he's like, well, if we have our use cases defined, we can kind of put a networking specific struct in there. So, it could be like, IP MTU,
It's in the
whatever
cap,
you get.
Michael. Don't tell me we don't have the use cases and requirements.
Oh
Come
no, I
on.
mean it's that I understand that. I think we just need to put them in a different place.
Okay, that's fair. But
Sorry, I didn't word that clearly. We have the use cases. We don't have them in the right location.
sure, fair.
So
Yeah.
I think that could be good to get in there somewhere. I can help.
Yeah, should
I'm
we
eating a
get those?
carrot.
So
Sorry, give me a second. I'm like choking on it.
I think that there's I think that Mache might have even maybe commented on it, but I think that Lionel and Antonio started putting in the SIG network requirements into one of their docs. Let me grab the
Yeah.
link to that in a sec, but maybe we
I-
should flesh that out with and make a copy of / version of our use cases in there. Let me find that doc.
Are you referring to this guy? Let me share this tab. Are you referring to this?
Yep, that's
Yeah, so Lionel add our use cases here, and I just read through them, and they are looking they are spot on. If you read through those, this is exactly
okay.
what we need.
We're covered
Uh,
then. Okay, sweet.
Yeah, we are kind of covered here. There was some discussion on, because I called out that having just a CNI and additional interfaces won't fly for us. That's that's not the value added we require. Though one pointer, I'm not sure, was it last week, 2 weeks ago, SIG networking. I talked about this DRA for multi-networking, and I think Tim gave a good point on our comment that about the value added to multi-networking with DRA is that however we integrate, we at least get the scheduler. So that's the value added at least we get, right? What I mean by that is we can have the node selective availability of a network through DRA for free in whatever way we integrate and with however hoops and jumps you have to go through to configure the whole thing, the complexity as it stands. You at least get the node selective availability of a network, right? So you can say that, okay, my network is available on node 1 and 2, not on all of them, right? So and you don't have to go deal through those. Right today, I think most of us handle this through some mutating webhooks where we say, okay, this network is available, or those VFs are available on only those nodes, and we mutate the pod when someone asks for an ad with that specific stuff they want, right? So we gain that for free in however we integrate with the array, right? And saying that we are not getting anything, unfortunately, that's a bad argument from our side, right? Because we're getting this one piece. So that's one thing that I got kind of shut down on our discussion last SIG networking. But yes, I think Lionel did a great job here adding those, and I read through those, and I think that it looks great. So give it a read. The link is in our agenda somewhere as well in the previous meetings. So yeah, it's in the previous weeks. There is a device management use cases. So there is that. Any other questions to this? Share this up. Doug, you want to give some notes on what happened yesterday? Then yeah, I'm surprised. I think there was mentioning about some weekly group for some folks. I don't know how that worked. Doug, yeah, go ahead, because I wasn't aware of that meeting neither.
Yeah, so yeah, it turned out, yeah, so yesterday's call was an extra meeting in addition to the regularly scheduled bi-weekly call. So it was like an API review call. And yeah, these are just my terse notes on it, but yeah, there was the extra call. And then stuff that we really just went over is what I was looking at. So like the link I have in chat is in there. And yeah, I mean that's
Oh.
what I was looking at. Go ahead. But yeah, that's all I've got on it for the moment. I do think it's at a critical time to be paying attention.
Yeah, that's fair. All right. Any other topics to catch up?
I have one thing to raise, which maybe
yeah,
is.
go ahead.
This is a very vague topic, and feel free to shoot me down. So one of the things I've been thinking a lot about is the bit that seems hardest about this whole multi-network work is getting the information back to the pod. There's a lot of other things that are tricky, but that's a bit that is, to me, feels hardest and most difficult to do. And I was wondering, we've gone for Kubernetes has gradually gone from a model of more and more extensibility, so you can define your own resources and your own fields and so on. Do you think there is any scope, and the answer is no, for adding arbitrary things to pod status or something like that? By which I mean having some kind of call out where you could say, I own this namespace and here's a blob of data that only I understand that I'm going to put into the status. I saw that resource claim information is just added as resource claim information. So they've gone with actually explicitly changing it, but making things a bit more flexible. Do you think there's any chance of that? Or is that a crazy approach that no one's going to buy because it would be changing what you get in a pod and everyone would have to deal with it?
I don't think I'm the one to speak to this. One comment I heard about pod, it's huge already. the object itself. Like if you think about the amount of text when you print the pod, the amount of text there is already in the status, at least it's crazy. And as you said, this will be custom. So basically, if your cluster basically just needs, you know what you're doing, and you don't care about the scale because it boils down to scale, then I agree with you. Why not, right? I think that's something that we could propose and ask for, because as you said, right? But then I think then we could in this group standardize on how multi-networking could have the status done, right? So that we are interop between various either the multi-networking endpoint / controller, if we were to create our own for gateway API and services, and then plus the just to have interoperability between like Multus and other implementations, right? So I think that's fair, and that's a good point, by the way. And this is something that apologies. I think Tim, if you watch last SIG Networks recording, he was even saying about even going further of something like having extension to core objects, right? A crazy idea. Someone floated that with him around some other cases as well. So they see that kind of capability where you could just extend a core object even that way. But that's something that's, I don't know, 5 years away from today. So probably that's not for today. But what you're saying, that would be awesome. Yeah, I would agree that like string to string, right? A map of string to string blob of whatever then, right? Or just
yeah, you can enable some features somewhere, and if you enable the feature, then a new thing may appear in your status. And if your application doesn't need to care about that, it will just ignore it.
Exactly.
But it allows anything that needs to get something into pod status or into pod, maybe even into pod spec.
Exactly.
And that's probably a little overkill.
Yeah,
making things more extensible feels.
Yeah, exactly. I agree with you. If we could get at least that's a fair point. Maybe we can. That's something that we can propose, right?
I'm not sure who the right people to propose it to. If it's SIG API machinery or something like that.
Yeah, definitely some of those folks. But we can start with SIG networking. I think Tim is the good starting point for this. I can float with him if I get a chance to meet with him internally. But I think next SIG networking would be something that we could kind of float that around.
And I'm assuming we'd have namespacing and convenience. Sorry, go on.
So you're talking about something outside of customer readiness for the pod? Some
yeah. So
a CRD kind of thing.
It's going in that direction. What I'm thinking is that the pod status would have, I'm just going to make some stuff up, but it will have, I don't know, multinetwork.io or whatever, and then below that there'll just be a blob of data. And if you don't care about multi-network, then you don't ever parse it, you don't do anything. But it's up to whoever owns multinetwork.io to set that up, and it's only going to be set up if you've done whatever multinetwork.io involves installing into your cluster. And then once you've done that for one, you can then add more, right? Yeah, so we'd standardize ours, but then other people could come along and do the same thing, and it saves having to go through the process of extending things in the future.
Yeah, exactly.
So a status per class for each device. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, exactly, something like that. So basically, and we already have for the claims there is a status per object, right? But we need something that can be centralized, right? In one point. Well, that's the kind of my kind of problem with claims. It's all distributed. So where do I go for my IP for this network, right? And I have to go this and 5 look up, like rather than this, and for this specific pod, right? So I have to go to pod, then go to the claim. What's that? Here I go to the pod and I see everything. That's at least today's experience with Multus, where I go to the pod, I YAML it, and I see all the annotations the way, so I know what's what, right? And so I have everything in one place. This will be exactly the same thing. Yeah, that's something that we can float, and basically maybe instead of just doing the standardized network, that will make us even more flexible, because then we can okay, I support MAC address. I don't support MAC address. So there might be some required fields like IP, and the rest is optional. And then you can add even more like PCI address, MAC address. So you can go crazy basically at that point, right?
Yeah. And it feels like it would, I mean, you're not getting anything really that you couldn't get with annotations and stringified JSON,
Right.
but nobody wants to do stringified JSON. You want to have a schema, and you want to have the thing that sets it up impose a schema, and you want to be able to understand it. And yeah, I think you could make it a lot better.
So keep in mind that will still be just a text, unfortunately, Pete, because how else? There's no other way to do it. You cannot we can standardize on the text. So basically, we could just reuse the networking plumbing workgroup annotation standard, copy paste that, and put it in that blob. Because keep in mind, it's still just string. I don't think you can have a proper. So that's the trade-off, right? We wanted to do what you're saying, your last sentence, where we have a proper schema. Here with blob, it's still just a string, right? So unfortunately, you still end up with just a JSON or something, right?
Yes, I'm thinking that you'd have a schema, but the schema would be, you'd have to have multiple providers, and multi-net would be one provider, and it would have its own schema that would be defined somewhere. So, I mean, maybe that doesn't give you much more than extensions. Sorry, extensions.
Then annotations.
Annotations, but it feels like it's the right place to put this. That you could build stuff.
That part is fair, yes.
So. I mean, I think it's worth asking around and seeing if there's any appetite for something like this. I expect the answer will be no, it's too complicated, we don't want to do it, but you never know. Making things more extensible is something that Kubernetes has been going all in for quite a while. So maybe it's another way we could do it. They can only say no.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Let's try to flow that around. Let's see. I will try to kind of run that by team as well if I had a chance. Otherwise, we could maybe go to the API machinery or the API folks. I'm not sure which SIG it is. I think it's API machinery probably. How does that look like if we were to have that? And it usually will be just nil, right? Empty string, nothing, right? But who wants to use it? And that those people would use it, right? I wonder whether are there like significant consequences of having that kind of blob in status? I don't know, and I wonder. I think API machinery would know. Any other topics? Going once, going twice. All right, I think that's it. Thanks, folks. Sync with you next week, and please look at that repository. Let's start giving our feedback to what's being proposed there. I think the most important thing is those files here, because that's explicitly calls out multi-networking examples. So
I do have
let's say again, Mike.
A couple of quick little questions on this
status. Okay.
What are you guys thinking about? How would you, are these metrics or some combination of some other kind of status? And how do you see, are you going to do custom controllers, or how are you going to affect or do something from this status that's reported?
So Mike, the way that we're looking at this today from the multi-networking, like with Multis and the net attached def, is we have the status, quote unquote, in an annotation, and that has a variety of information like, hey, there was a interface created, it's named net2, it has these IP addresses, and it has this MTU, for example, right? Like there's a number of fields there, some of which are optional, some of which would never get populated there, like say in the case of DPDK, and it has its own IP stack. We don't know anything about the IP addressing. But
so a JSON structure with some name value pairs in it that could be looked at for some purpose. I'm just
Yeah,
trying to.
so you're picking up what I'm throwing down, because what I was gonna say is, so you're deploying a workload, and let's say it's for the sake of discussion, it's a workload it's some legacy and it's been ported over to Kubernetes. It doesn't have a lot of Kubernetes intelligence to it. So what you do is you use the downward API, and you're able to expose some of that information as a environment variable, and then say you have a like entry point script picks it up and it populates X, Y, and Z in a config for the workload.
Right. So by downward, I see you're saying Cry will have an extension point so that when you create the pod, you'll get these annotations and they can be accessed by your device manager through NRI or whatnot, other tooling kind of capability.
I think this is mostly to give to the workload itself, Mike. I think that's what we need here. How
Correct.
you expose inside the pod, because it's even hard today to say that inside.
Would have to be some kind of a
that-
mountable resource in the container if you want to expose it, or an environment
no,
variable with the name value.
yeah, I think download
That's a
API
little
does
weird
that,
adding
right?
ENVs, but okay, either works.
I think download API. I'm not sure what does download API. It adds them to
Downward
the
API
specific
from the
pod,
point. Yes, the downward API lets you inside the pod see a volume that's just got a JSON file in it, and that's got your annotations and labels in it.
Right? There
So
you go.
anything that's
So-
in your annotations, you can extract from inside the pod. You obviously have to write a little bit of code to do that, but it's parsing JSON. It's not very hard.
Right. And so basically that's what we mean here, right? And because why is because you know that you have your, let's say I'm gonna throw in, like recently I was talking about like some telco use case, right? This pod is connected to a default network, which is simple V8, but then N3, N4. I have those two networks, right? And N3 and N6. Which PCI is which? How do I say if it's those DPDK interfaces, which PCI address is what, right? I need to know that, right?
It would be nice.
I didn't.
Yeah, I'd be able to say which one. You want.
Exactly. And then of course you can solve it through like maybe VLANing out, and then your application has to have more knowledge. Or I can just say, okay, those I have explicitly two separate interfaces that you do one or the other. So
Sorry,
what is what, right?
VLAN's 1 is not available. It's already allocated to a root.
Or that, or that. Yeah, there you go.
Just saying.
So
Okay.
but then either you pre-hard code things like saying that, okay, I will use VLAN X for my N3 and VLAN Y for my N6, or I have two interfaces that do that functionality. So how do I identify things? So this is where the download API will step in and say, okay, you have your network, because then you have your claim name, right? That's what's important. That's why I keep fighting for that network representation API in Kubernetes to ensure that, okay, I have standardized network representation. So now it's probably going to be the device claim saying this is my default device claim for network, and this is device claim for N6, and this is device claim for N3, right? And then anyone wants to connect to it, that they get access. That's kind of the gist. All right.
Okay. So you're writing in on, instead of doing KNI pod spec changes, you're actually going to have device KNI type changes. Okay, that's fine. Last names.
I think this is all in flux.
It's a way to add. It's a way to add. I got it.
Yeah. I think so. Yeah.
That's all downward. And I was trying, the status stuff, I was trying to figure out, well, one, how would you expose that? I mean, certainly container runtime's got the pod information and any additional stuff we add to,
Right.
To the pod initialization APIs, the run pod.
Mhm.
And the image needs these things as well.
Right.
But then also you're going to have some way to get responses back out. And that's what I was trying to figure out. You said status, and it's like, okay, well, where are you going to put that? Is it only going to be accessible through some kind of a probe, a custom probe that your device is going to write? Or is that something you're expecting the container runtime to grab from a metric from a device through NRI or something? I'm just trying to figure out what the path is you're expecting.
Right. So this is where basically what Michael was calling out, like maybe the KNI can do that, right? There needs to be some blob that will understand the new device claim, which corresponds to the CNI, and basically replaces CNI or maybe calls the CNI in the background as a instructions from the device claim, right? And then that guy then as well reports back to the pod status, right?
I got you.
I don't
Go
know.
ahead,
I'm
Michael.
hand
So you-
waving here, hand waving a lot here, but yeah, something like that along those lines. Michael?
Yeah, well, DRA would be that whatever is responsible is like the gRPC server, the driver, I think is their terminology.
Yeah.
That will be here. So that is what will be, doing the work and returning any information. Ideally,
Yeah.
that would be
so a server running attached to Kubelet, just like the container runtime is, and
Yeah,
all the
it'll be-
management metrics, they're all coming from there. So if Kubelet wants to know status, they're going to have to talk to DRA KNI, right, for network, and then also container runtime.
Well, I think the container runtime involvement is, getting the network namespace. I think you can do that without, involving the container runtime, but you do need that in some shape or form. So I'm sure there'll be some weird turnaround, or even if we've discussed putting it in like as the run pod sandbox return, like it could be on top of the current where it returns the sandbox ID, maybe it can return some additional meta information, but that's also dependent on the current ordering because the API I think that we're discussing doesn't really exist. So say if it was executed before run pod sandbox, the network namespace actually doesn't exist. So
Okay. But
we would
I'll at
have to
least have
figure
a,
all that out. It's all up to the imagination, but the high level gist is that there's a gRPC server where the kubelet is the client, and then we have some driver that is the server.
okay, and we just have to decide if we're going to loop back that when I get an exit from the last container, who do I call? Right? It could be we just I call Kubelet back and say, hey, we're exiting. You better go kill that network. I was just trying to figure it out. Okay.
Yeah, well, at that point, that's the stop and remove pod sandbox calls. So, like at that point, the containers aren't involved in that because they're already stopped and killed.
Yeah, I think you still want your namespace though.
No, oh yeah, well, the order of operations is
That's the order.
stop,
That's what I was talking about.
kill,
Order
and
operations. Okay. All right. Yeah. All right. So this is interesting. I didn't know you guys had made the transition to using these new CRD kind of DRA class devices, and that's the
We didn't fully, but we are embracing it and going
Okay.
with the flow, kind of. We
I
are
sort of
adapting.
guessed you might be with all these changes going on. That's why I
Yes.
called in. I wanted to see what's
Yeah.
going on. All right.
All right, folks. Have a good day and evening. Bye.
All right.
All right,
Cheers.
take it
Thanks.
easy,
Bye.
all. Bye.